best pony knowledge by. Oh, better. I got a place where winning ain't tough to do. You wanna be cool, stable do. Your horse racing fantasy come true. But no, stable do.
Download the Stable Duel app and play today.
Friday, June the 16th. Hope everyone's having a nice week as we get set for another weekend of some horse racing, thoroughbred racing, and harness racing now on the Stable Duel app. Matt, that is one thing that we love about Stable Duel. I was talking to you before we started about, how I connected with Stable Duel at the very beginning when they started a couple years ago. I've got one of the old school Stable Duel hats on. And one thing that we've always loved, and I can say there have been positives, there have been some things that didn't work, but they are always willing to try new things, new tracks, new games, new styles, new formats, listen to the customers, listen to the players. What do you like? Let's tweak it so it's just what you want. And people wanted harness racing, and now they're going to get harness racing. And there's a lot of free contests too. It's incredible to think of standard bred racing. We've had jumps racing, thoroughbred racing. Obviously there's contests that involve quarter horse races in the mix with them. There are, thinking back to when they would have contests that tied in with the Royal Rumble and NASCAR and F1 events. They They really think outside the box, and that's something we don't get a whole lot in horse racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Even this year they had a contest that was connected in some way to the NCAA tournament in terms of you getting a certain team, if you win, that sort of thing. It's great. They do a lot of really fun contests. They have some great contests coming up and some great ideas for contests coming up at Assiniboia. So if you finish in the top 5 in the Monday Assiniboia contest, you're automatically entered into a private $1,000 winner take all game on the night of the Manitoba Derby. So, that's another cool idea of you don't even need to win the contest to get into this more exclusive sort of, contest later on. So just a lot of great ideas. And I am definitely just getting into the harness racing vibes. That's not my dad. He would always joke and go, the pacer's pace and the trotter's trot. And, he would always, he really loved it, but I never got into it. And so now I'm getting into it though, through the app, and a lot of free contests, low dollar contests, and low stakes. So it's a great way to learn the sport and get to know a little bit about how these horses run.
I know one man who doesn't mind. He'll bet on anything if it's 5-1. He'll play on some Meadowlands over there on some of those Friday, Saturday nights when he's firing away at other racetracks. That is the sniper, my man, Barry Spears. How you doing, buddy?
Hanging in there. Yeah. I like to dabble with the harness on especially Friday nights.
Yeah. The timing of it.
Yeah.
While you're kicking back, getting playing the night races or just finishing up with the day tracks. Maybe you got a little drink in you or something. You're having some fun. Yeah.
The Charlestown and Meadowlands are like the guilty pleasures on Friday.
That was my shift a lot of the time. It would be that you get a little Delta Downs kind of in the mix right there too. Usually, sometimes some Evangeline running right there at night. And then even if you're lucky, some Remington. But I don't know. I'm not driving. So we'll see. Anyways, we're going to dive into best bets for this weekend for Friday and for Saturday for Stable Duel. It's actually closing weekend at Santa Anita. So Saturday, there will be a big game at Santa Anita, but it's a really big weekend at Monmouth Park too. Barry, we were talking, Monmouth is a track that, gosh, I used to play a little more. They had the one meet where they had that incredible meet.
Remember they elevated the purses and they ran not many days during the week, but every card was ridiculously good.
And they were incredible. All huge purses, all the big jocks, all the big horses, trainers, everybody was over there. I remember playing that quite a bit. And now you dabble kind of here and there, but there are some really nice horses showing up on Saturday this week, and it's Haskell Preview Day. So they have an all stakes pick 4. There's a big Stable Duel contest on Saturday. If you're already looking at those Monmouth races, you have to dive into the Stable Duel game because you've already done a lot of the work, and we're going to help you out taking a look at some of those races for Saturday. But before we get to Saturday, let's start with Friday. I'm going to talk some Friday harness later on today. There's a free game at the Meadows, so I'm going to dish out a couple plays that are going to be in my stable duel lineup. But first, let's start at Gulfstream Park for Friday. And you know what I noticed too, just sort of putting some of the schedule together and was looking at some of the races yesterday when I was doing stuff for DRF. There are just a ton of races today. Like Gulfstream's got a 10 race card, Belmont's got a 10 race card, Santa Anita has a 10 race card, all on Friday. So even extra races on Friday. Where do we want to start at Gulfstream Park? Let's see, Maddie, you're going to go right off the bat.
Yeah, I'll get us started off in race number 1, and this is just to let people know who are playing, want to play today. Gulfstream's contest is a $20 pay-in, $2,000 pot contest with a maximum of 3 stables. The winning stable gets $400, and get this: the top 25 pay out and double up. So really nice contest to get into there today at Gulfstream. But yeah, I'm going to start off in race number 1, and this is, listen, it's my type of race. We're in kind of the maiden claiming territory, 12-5, going 6 furlongs on the dirt, and I really like the number 4 horse For the Thrill. This is one who has only run on the dirt once, and I think this is one of the things that I tend to look at is horses that are changing surfaces and things along those lines. The speed figure on the dirt absolutely fits in this spot. You could say, well, the heavy favorite, the 7, has run a better race on the dirt. Yeah, one better race on the dirt, but not much else. And so that 46 buyer speed figure would absolutely hold up in this spot. You're getting 12-1 on the morning line, and Stable Duel. This is only going to cost you $750. I like that we're also picking up Lionel Reyes, who's obviously a big time jockey down there in that colony, especially during the off championship meet times. I always like using his horses, and we're going from having 2 straight apprentices to picking up a much more seasoned jockey. The interesting thing is, it's fascinating that they've been trying this horse on turf and synthetic, because the pedigree kind of would suggest that dirt is the way to go. And so I just, it's kind of interesting. So I feel like this horse is finally getting on the right surface, should sit actually kind of an ideal trip. He's, kind of sitting not quite right on the lead, but just off. And I just think from a Stable Duel standpoint, this horse makes a ton of sense at 12-1. It's hardly going to cost you anything. And I just think this horse is, like I said, going to turn in a really honest effort. Even if this horse doesn't win, feels like a lock to get you underneath. And from a Stable Duel standpoint, really rack up a lot of positive points for a very inexpensive horse. So For the Thrill was my play in race number 1.
We've got to give a shout out to Jake with thrilling picks, right? See, this one is got to be one that he likes.
Oh yeah, For the Thrill. Yeah, exactly.
There we go. Right? Yeah. Shout out Jake there. As we get things started with a nice 12-1 shot in the opener on Friday for Maddie. So we will head next to race number 6 at Gulfstream Park. Barry has plays in the 6th and the 8th. We'll finish it up in the 10th at Gulfstream Park. Race 6 is actually it's the feature on the day. It's a non-winners of 2 second level allowance race going 1 mile and 70 yards on the synthetic in here. And Barry, it's not the biggest field in the world, but it's intriguing because there's not that much speed in here, right?
Correct. And that's precisely where I was going with this. Not much speed in here. And, it's ripe for the upset. I mean, the horse's free data is on the outside, which is, tough in a short field, because they're, you have to force your hand. And I don't think they really want the lead. The couple of times that this horse did make the lead, didn't really do very much. And I don't think that horse is comfortable being out there like that. That being said, I ended up on number 4, Penn Street, because that one looks like the horse that will inherit the lead here. There's really nobody else that looks like they even want to touch the lead.
No. His races are like the sprint, the dirt sprints that he's exiting just are way faster internal fractions than a lot of the other races that the horses are coming out of, where they're going longer on the turf, things like that too, right? Just naturally.
Exactly. He's just naturally going to be forwardly placed. He's probably going to be on the lead. Will most likely be able to get away with some soft fractions, and I think this one's going to be tough to beat in the lane.
Penn's Street, the number 4, 8-1 on the morning line, and that will only cost you $3,000 when you're building your stable dual lineup. Keep in mind, you have 10 spots to fill and a $50,000 salary cap. So when you're putting your lineup together, whether you're someone who has a model or you just sort of write it out with your hand, or whether you just do it mentally, keep in mind, you're shooting for that about $5,000 per average. So you're looking for around about a 6-to-1 shot or so. Anytime you have a horse that's a little higher than that, it gives you a little wiggle room in another race where you could spend up a little bit. So when you're putting together a stable dual lineup, it's not like when you're making a wager at the track where you can put in every horse you want if you just add more money. In stable duel, you really are forced to have to get creative in some races. You can't just pick the chalk in each and every race. It makes you, it challenges you as a handicapper a little bit more. And I think I got to say, I can raise my hand absolutely and say for all three of us, I think it has helped us through the years. Just being forced to look at certain races like, oh, can't use the favorite in here. What am I going to do? And then that expands your mind overall when we're talking about races like this. As we move to the 8th race for Barry on Friday, 5.5 furlong sprint on the synthetic, $35,000 to $25,000 claiming level here. These are restricted claimers. How do you see this one playing out, Barry?
Yeah, this is one of those races that would be ideal on the turf, but since they don't have turf right now,
Yeah,
this is what we're going to get a lot of over the summer until they get that situation fixed up. These condition claimers, 5.5 on the synthetic. And this horse I kind of like quite a bit. And I don't think that this horse is actually going to be the price the morning line. I think this horse is going to get bet down, possibly even be favored, and it's number 4, Bart's Dream. This horse is making steady progression in a race that has quite a bit of speed. It just sets up perfectly for this horse. He's running a couple of ungraded stakes, one at Monmouth, one at Woodbine on the turf. Didn't fare so well. His synthetic try to break his maiden was pretty decent. He's improved upon that, coming off the bench from August of 2022 to May 27th, his last start. And this horse is going forward. This is the
those
right
two
race.
stakes races last year, those horses that he ran into, Sharp as Attack came back after that and was second in the juvenile turf sprint, and then ran in the Breeders' Cup turf sprint, and then ran earlier this year again in a stakes race. Like, that's a legitimate horse compared to the $35,000 level that we're at. And then look at the race following that, where again, he's behind this horse named Philip My Dear. This is a really nice horse that runs up at Woodbine. I actually had this horse in last year in my fantasy league, and this is like a grade 1 placed horse, like a legitimate nice animal. So those stakes races are even a little bit stronger than they would look on paper. Like you said, I think the template fits really well for him. Second start back, you just feel like you got the big race coming right here.
Yeah, that he looks like he's going to be sitting on a good race here, and fits well with these. The favorites, the horses that are going to be bet, don't look that overpowering. Happy Runners taking 11 times to break his maiden, and he didn't even win.
Yeah, he had to get put up.
He got DQ'd and he got put up. So you can't trust any of that in here. And it looks like Bart's Dream is going to catch some action and be in a good spot to win this race.
Ay, caramba. I eat my shorts.
Remember that back in the day?
Man,
Don't have a cow, man. Don't have a cow, man.
Funny, real quick story. My mom, we used to have season tickets to the Dodger game. We shared with like my dad's brothers. Like, we all had a few, so we could all go. I was really young. So my mom and dad had them even before I was born. And so they kept them till when I was young. And I loved The Simpsons. My favorite. I loved watching it when I was a kid. And I knew that when it hit like 8:00, that The Simpsons would come on. Like, that was what I knew. And so we were out at the Dodger game one night, and the game starts at like 7:10, and it's like 7:50, 7:55. And I'm like, it hits 8, and I'm like, oh, The Simpsons, let's go. We got to watch The Simpsons. And we're at the Dodger game, and my parents are trying to explain it to me, like that. It's 8 o'clock. We're at the Dodger game. By the time we get home, The Simpsons aren't even going to be on. But I got no clue. I'm 3, and I just melt down at the game. My parents will still tell me this story, and I went ballistic. Like, they could not stay. I was screaming, kicking, The Simpsons, The Simpsons. I was screaming The Simpsons at the Dodger game. I'll always remember that too. So, yeah, I was probably about the same age that Milo is right now. And I knew that was my fix, man. And I knew exactly the time too. I knew when to go sit down. So sorry, anyone that got annoyed by me yelling that day at the Dodger game.
So my show was The Price is Right. That was the show
great.
I watched as a kid all the time. And I watched it with my mom during the day. And I remember I had a meltdown. I was at home, but I had a meltdown when she showed me the kindergarten schedule and that I was going to miss The Price is Right. Because it was like you do a half day, you do the morning or the afternoon.
You figured it out.
And I was like, holy, and I just started losing it. My mom, God bless her, was like, I will tape all The Price is Right. So that when you come home, you can watch. And this is, you could tell I was an only child because I got a lot of things catered to me as a result of that. Like, but yeah, I mean, I was going ballistic because I was going to miss The Price is Right, and that was just like my world at 5 years old.
That is so great. That is so great. So, yeah, The Simpsons, man, still running strong. Running strong. All the things they've predicted through the years too. And you can check on those. So I believe, Maddie, you're going to close us out, right? Race number 10?
I was going to, but the number 2 scratched. So that was my choice. Was Feline. So that was unfortunate, but glad I at least caught it now rather than continuing to talk about it.
Yep. So we caught Feline out for Friday. So let's move along real quick. I wanted to pull up a couple today. One thing that's really nice about harness racing in general too, they almost always give you past performances for free. Like you can almost always get past performances for free at the particular websites. And through the Stable Duel app, you can basically get like the program past performances for free. Pennsylvania has a lot of them that they will also run and give you for free. So let's pull up just 2 plays today for me because, Matt, it's a free game today, right? At the Meadows?
Yeah, you got a free game. And so, it's only a $50 pop, but it's a free game. And so that's always a lot of fun. And then if you feel a little, frisky, there's a $10 game as well. So that's not even that high of stakes. If you cap the whole thing for the free game, $10, might as well go and play it. And the projected payouts are really nice. $250 goes to the winner.
So you can honestly just type in the Meadows Harness Racing and it'll pull it right up, Meadows harnessracing.com. And here are a look at the past performances. You can get a look at very similar type past performances that you will see in thoroughbreds. This first race is first time starters, so that's not a race that I would want to give out a bunch of analysis on. Let's move to race number 7. I have a play in the 7th and the 11th race today at the Meadows. In race number 7, I'm going to look at the number 3 in here. He's a Sweetheart. So he's actually 9-1 on the morning line, which isn't a price that we see often in the thoroughbred world. But in from a Stable Duel standpoint, he's going to cost us 2,000. It was so weird doing some of these lineups where there's 2,000 and 4,000. I'm like, wow, this is just different. But what I like about He's a Sweetheart, and you can just look from seeing his form here overall, the number 3, he's just been very consistent this year so far since coming back off the qualifier. And it's just like thoroughbred racing. The more that you race throughout the year, the fitter you're going to be. You're going to get yourself into a better spot. His first start of the year, he was 2nd, beaten just a neck. He came back and he won on May the 25th. June the 1st was 3rd, beaten just a neck. And then last time out on June the 9th, he was at this in a similar spot behind Captain Albert G and Musketeer Hanover. He finished 3rd that day. And honestly, he was tracking them from 4th. He got stuck inside when one of the horses to the outside made an early move and he got shuffled back a little bit. And he just kept to the inside. He moved down and he closed really well. I thought it was a good effort. And what you'll see a lot of the times in harness racing, the horses to the outside, they're in some trouble on the smaller tracks, on the shorter tracks, the tracks that are like a half mile or a 5/8 style, because they don't, it's like a bull ring style thoroughbred track. there's not as much room for them to make up ground late in the race or to make moves throughout the race. It's just the horses that get towards the front generally race a lot better. I think He's a Sweetheart will get a nice trip in here. This one is 9-1 on the morning line, so will only cost you 2,000 in your stable duel lineup. I've got one more for you. Actually, if you are paying attention, Easter Lily, there's a bonus one for you right next door in race number 8. She's going to be in my lineup too, coming off her runner-up effort last time. But the final one that I wanted to dish out is in race number 11, and that's the number 5, Southern Patricia. She is one that I just sort of like the template of her too. And if you're someone who just plays thoroughbred racing, like handicap these races like you would a thoroughbred race. It's not going to always work out exactly that way, but that's a good starting point. That's a good place to start. Southern Patricia didn't race for basically the month of April into May. Came off a race on May the 20th. Needed the race. Second start back, May the 25th. Again, shows a little bit improvement. Was too far out of it. Then on June the 7th, inside draw got much more aggressive that day. And now she is fitter. She is taking steps forward. And Southern Patricia fits really well. One thing you want to look at too with these races is your final times, your closing times. How horses race in their final quarter is a little bit more important in the harness world, to me at least, than it is in the thoroughbred world. So when you see horses that close well, that are racing well the week before, a lot of times it transfers over. And the reason that is because these horses race so often, the form from one week to the next is a little bit more consistent. Think about our thoroughbreds now. Sometimes they don't race for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2.5 months. We don't even know if that horse is still feeling as well as they did the last time they ran, which could have been 2 months ago. So that's what's nice about harness. Once you start paying attention and you're playing these tracks often, these horses race every week. So you remember their race from last week. One horse got in trouble. They got stuck. Oh, yeah, I like that horse. It's basically what you kind of deal with at Assiniboia now, Matt, right?
Yeah.
Those same horses run like every 2 weeks. So you get used to them on that Monday night schedule now when you're doing your Monday night show.
Yeah.
And then you become really familiar with them. You feel like about a month into it, like, oh, yeah, every time you go to look, you already kind of know what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, you see the name and you're like, wait, has this horse just run? I just remember handicapping this horse last week. And then you're like, oh, indeed, yes, this horse did in fact run last week.
Yep.
And so, it's a nice feeling when you start to get familiar with them like that. And that is one of the things I do like about harness racing is that they just kind of keep running back, because I remember last year, Bulldog Hanover was, everybody was talking about that horse.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because everybody's like, Bulldog Hanover is running. And I'm like, oh, it's a big deal. And then like a week later, they're like, Bulldog Hanover's running. I'm like, wait a second, he just ran. Like,
Yeah, what?
Like,
What?
You know what it reminds me of a lot, especially with the harness and with the lower level activity. It reminds me of Yahtzee. You know how you have all those dice in the little barrel, and that's what it is. It's usually like the same group of horses every week. They put them in the little barrel, shake it up, and that's what happens. And they beat up on each other, and they do it every week almost, unless one of them they move up in class a little bit, or move down in class. But it's very easy to see the form cycles. Or it's easier to see the form cycles than it is in thoroughbred racing because they run so often.
Exactly. It just makes a little bit more sense. You can always get an idea of what they're doing and how they're moving forward, trending in the right direction, or maybe kind of over the hill where they're kind of going backwards. Let's move to Monmouth Park for Saturday. Big day. It's called Haskell Preview Day. They actually have 4 stakes races. 3 of them are graded stakes races, and it's a preview for Haskell, where you're going to get to see a lot of these horses run back in even bigger graded stakes races. I thought the races came up really, really good, really strong, because sometimes these preview days will be a little chalky because you won't have all of the best horses yet. They're going to ship in next month. You still have them separated, but that was not the case today. I thought, and what made, I think, these races intriguing from a gambling standpoint, Matt, and from a stable duel standpoint, there are a few of these favorites that are starting in some of these races that are, in my opinion, vulnerable, because usually that's the starting point, right? First start of the year, first start off the long layoff. We know that a couple of these Chad Brown runners aren't pointed for the Monmouth Stakes or
right. It's
they're
funny. Yeah, it's
pointed
funny you
for the
say that
United
because
Nation,
yeah, Trip Hooven is not a horse that's necessarily pointed towards Monmouth in June,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think there's absolutely another Chad Brown runner like Artorias is coming back from a really long layoff, so these are
and
this is
Gina
clearly the
Romantica
first
too,
step.
right?
Yeah,
You've got a
exactly.
couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are horses that are clearly kind of they're pointed towards bigger things later in the year. This is their first step, but it's also a good opportunity to take a shot against them in these spots because otherwise, by this time that's horses in their second, third race in their form cycle, good luck trying to find a price in that case. But here I feel like, yeah. And also listen, it's a 14 race card. So from a stable duel standpoint, you can pick and choose your spots.
Yep.
You're not forced into playing every single race. There's a 2-year-old race. Listen, if you just want to skip that, don't worry about it. We should mention there's going to be rain overnight Friday and into Saturday, thunderstorms on Saturday. So some of the early turf races might get off turf, might, just be sloppy conditions or, soft conditions. So again, you can pick and choose your spots and you don't have to feel like you're forced into playing every single race.
Okay, let's dive on into Monmouth Park for Saturday. Maddie, you are going to kick us off. Actually, I believe you're both going to be in
Yep.
race
Oh, yeah.
number 5.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
we'll see where we go. Milan is 16th on the turf. We've got maiden claimers here. Barry, let's get started with you. Who are you looking at in race number 5?
Okay.
Barry.
I like to think outside the box a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And this race in particular, I'm not really fond of the horse that probably is going to take a lot of action, number 2. What's good? This horse has been on the lead, just spits the bit out. And this is such a weird drop from, maiden special weight all the way down to 16.
Nothing
I mean,
along the way,
it
right?
just,
No, not
yeah,
back to 25 or 50 where he's actually
no,
run well.
that doesn't bode well for a horse that's probably going to be odds on or close to it. And I think this race might heat up a little bit up front. I think Motown Annie, who's trained by the same trainer of the horse that I'm going to pick, may show some speed. The 11, Say My Name, definitely wants to get
Yeah.
out there. I think that's enough to really menace What's Good to have that one just kind
I
of.
think you got to
what
say
he
it when you
does.
say it, though. I think you got to say, shame my name, shame my name. I think you even have to say it that way. Like, I feel like you have to.
But yeah, I'm really hoping that Motown Annie really kind of goes and sets it up for Zippy Zinni, who's my pick here. And the reason I picked this horse is it's not that far off the best races in this field,
No.
especially coming from behind.
He
Going
was 4
long
to
on the
1
turf,
she was 4-1 last time.
right? And and was favored the 2 times before that, and didn't really run all that bad. I guess you could say that the
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 April
post
21st
position,
race, she had trouble. You know what I mean? Like,
right?
in the 2 races when she didn't run as well, she had legitimate trouble in those races too. So
Right, and she got bumped steady the last time. It was kind of a weird race, but I think this is a weird race in general, and that's why I'm kind of going outside the box a little bit, going with Zippy Zinni, who's getting top rider here. So we'll see.
Zippy Zinni there. I got to give a shout out to my buddy, one of my best friends. Actually, we when we were going to PCC together, he's from Brooklyn, and so he's got a real thick Brooklyn accent, real thick New York accent, and he always says, "What's good? What's good?" That's his thing.
What's popping?
What's good?
good?
What's good, son? And he calls me son. He's a few years older than me. And we worked together at Islands restaurant. We were waiters, and then when I was in college, we created a sports talk show together called the Play by Play, and we did a radio show together. It was actually the first sort of show that I did with my buddy Justin, and we would stream it. It was only if you were at PCC, like if you were within like a mile, you could hear it, and you could actually get it on
That's
Facebook.
cool.
So we streamed it on Facebook, and that's how we started playing it to some of our friends, and then they would chime back in with us. And so shout out to my buddy. Actually, when I was at PCC, we did like play-by-play for some of the baseball games, soccer games. I called basketball games, football games. So when we go through, like, I've actually done play-by-play for almost every sport, because I've actually done wrestling as well, which is one that most people haven't done. So I got a lot on the bucket list to cross off. And shout out to the old man, Justin. What's good, son? Hope you're having
What's good, son?
What's good, son? Actually, It was just his 1 year anniversary. When I went to Oklahoma last year, it was for my buddy's Justin's wedding. He moved out to Oklahoma. So
that's
shout
cool.
out to the old man. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to be singing Say My Name, and I'm going to text Justin a little bit later on. That's what's great about a horse racing card. You never know where it's going to take you when you look at the names of these horses and like the tangents that you could get on. Let's keep rolling. So Matt,
Yeah.
where are you going to go in race number 5?
I'm going to go to number 5 in race number 5, and that is Dixie Groove. And Gino, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the replay of the last race,
Sure.
we're not going to have to watch much of it, but Dixie Groove is the number 3 in this race. And this is, you want to see a bad start to a race and a bad situation. Just watch this one because she's in, like I said, in the number 3 post, and the break is fine, breaks out a little bit, but it doesn't have any issues. Here's where we start to run into problems. She goes down on the rail, and then she gets pinched down at the rail, and this is a scary situation.
Oh, goodness.
Hits the rail, is checked up severely, and goes all the way to the back. Now, the crazy part is, if you forward this, to like halfway down the backstretch a little bit,
She's in the
still
race.
back. But now
Yeah.
she starts coming up, and this is the really kind of amazing part, is she's still, despite all of that,
Coming up the rail.
coming up the rail,
Yeah.
which it takes a lot of guts.
A lot
I
of
think, for a horse
balls to
that
do
just-
that, man.
I know.
Yeah, so just did that, and she's going to end up angling out a little bit, but she's going to end up being, and now you see her really making a move around the 3rd and 4th turn, and so it's interesting because it might have ended up being the best thing for her, but I think this race, Say My Name was actually on the lead in this last race as well. And so I think the very similar pace dynamics that Barry was talking about. So now you see
She
the
ran
3
into
making
traffic
this
right there
card.
too, up the
Exactly.
rail.
Running into traffic on the rail, tight spots. Now she's going to kind of finally angle out a little bit, but she's going to end up being in another tight spot here in a second, and she's going to end up in a dead heat for 3rd
Wow,
by the
this is
time
a
this is
really
all
good
said
race.
and done. And so, look at this cluster of horses that she's in, and yet she still gives that last final spurt to get up there for 3rd. So, I just
a
listen,
good find.
6 to 1 in the morning line, only going to cost you $5,000. She naturally is going to sit a little further back. If you go back and look at her other turf performance, the speed figure is absolutely good enough to win this race, the 53. I understand why the speed figure came back a little bit slower in the last one, but still, very similar dynamics to what Barry talked about. I like
In
Dixie Groove
the
at
race
6 to
shape,
1.
you guys are both looking for horses that are sitting too, the
Yep.
way it's going to set up. Yeah.
Yep.
That was a nice find there
You
on
know,
Dixie Groove.
my concern for Dixie Groove, because I almost picked that horse too. The last time was the time that was.
I
You
know.
almost
afraid
wonder.
of,
Yeah.
like,
Because
that
she was
that
favorite.
horse was
She was favored last time.
That was the
right,
drop
and
spot.
looked
Yep.
like that horse was like money in the bank, and
And
especially
you know
after
what?
that
She
trip,
was actually
everything.
right.
Yeah.
Now she was like, she ran that well. That was a winning race. If she just
Yeah,
doesn't have that trouble at the beginning, the way she was traveling, and I know what you mean. It's scary when you feel like you may have gotten the really big effort that last time.
Right.
Does
that
she
was a-
run
what I
well
was
again,
afraid
but
of.
maybe just not that well, right? Like that was like the tip top one. Or maybe
Definitely
she fits
going
here.
on my multi tickets. For
Yeah.
sure.
Maybe she fits
No
and
doubt
she's knocking
about
on the door, but I completely agree with you on that. She's in the multis for me for sure there. That's a look at race number 5 at Monmouth on Saturday. Barry, you head to the 9th race, another turf race, $16,000 restricted claimers going a mile and a 16th on the turf. Talk to us about what you see in this one.
Yeah, this one's a little all over the place too. There's a lot of horses doing a lot of things in here except winning on the turf. And this is like one of those races where they're just, everybody in this race just doesn't want to win, and somebody has to win.
Yeah.
I think there's not too much speed in here. You could say the one might want to be on the lead, but I don't really think that horse really wants the lead. Beyond that, it's really not much. I mean, everybody's kind of wanted to launch from way back. You might get some speed out of the 12, who may or may not stay in the race. But that leads me to my horse that I picked, which is number 4, Pleasant Valiant. I think this horse's race back at Tampa on March 19th was pretty good. and fits very, very well with this group here. This horse has tried better and actually didn't run all that bad on April 26th, optional 32. Then drops back in here after a wide trip, and it was a really weirdly run race. And I could just put a line through that last one. Second time at the level usually is the better time, and that's what we're getting here with Pleasant Valiant, getting a break in the weight too. That can't hurt. And in a strange event, I'm gonna go with a horse that's kind of a price at 12 to 1.
Yeah, he's got a little versatility to him, it looks like. Pleasant Valiant, and he sort of runs that same race. This is just going to be a better level for him now with Pleasant Valiant. He's 12 to 1 on the morning line. That will only cost you $750 in your stable dual lineup. So as you're putting together your Saturday Monmouth contest, take a look at that one from the Sniper. So I will head right next door.
I think all three of us are right next
Yeah, I
to
think
him.
we will all the 10th race, and like the 10th through the 13th are the stakes races. So there's an all stakes pick 4 that starts. I bet the approach in this race from all of us is just no Kingsbarn, right?
Right.
We're all
Yes,
we're
you're
all
right.
against
Correct.
Kingsbarns.
That is
So,
the correct
you are
answer.
correct, sir.
Ding, ding,
So
ding,
we
ding,
will-
ding.
We'll all have maybe different approaches or different ways to go, but just looking at the race, I never have been that high on this horse to begin with. I think his Louisiana Derby figure is a little dressed up. He got a really easy lead that day, and a couple of the horses behind him had legitimate trouble that day, like Disarm. So I don't know how strong that particular race was. Now, he did come back and set legitimate fractions in the Derby. Like, he was right on the lead through quick fractions. It's kind of crazy to me to look back to that he was like less than 12 to 1. Like, he got bet like that. He wasn't,
Yeah,
he really
Got
did.
a lot of action. Yeah.
But Matt, I'm cold on him in this spot. I think he's worth taking a shot against, especially in a stable dual lineup. So how do you see this playing out? Who might you look at if we're all kind of having that same approach?
Yeah, I think that you're kind of looking, and I think the way this race is going to play out, you look at the number 6 Subrogate. That's probably the horse that's going to get the lead, and it's a question of whether or not this horse can get the distance. The horse that I actually really like is the horse that should actually sit behind Kingsbarns and Subrogate, and that's the number 7. How Great Is Nate? And
he ran a bang up race in the Long Branch.
He really did. Ran a really nice race, and awfully cool, and 90% Matty are nice horses. And this is a horse that started his career. I mean, it's important to remember, was 4 for 4 winning going into that Gotham, and that Gotham, everything just went wrong. I mean, you lost the rider right away. It was a riderless horse. One of the things I will say is, and this is going to sound bizarre, I remember watching that race as it was happening and thinking to myself, this riderless horse is really good because he was so well disciplined. He knew exactly when to kind of come over onto the rail, and he ran such a good race that it kind of screwed up the race for a lot of other horses, because he wasn't just 15 paths out in the middle of the track like a lot of times are riderless horses. He was hugging the inside rail coming for home. And so it was kind of a bizarre situation, but he came back from that, and then I thought really took a step forward to the Long Branch, which is what you'd wanted to see. He should sit right behind the speed of Kingsbarns and Subrogate. I think he's a horse that I like in this spot. 6 to 1 on the morning line, only $5,000. So that was where I went for my top selection.
Barry, who are you looking at in the Pegasus, which is the local prep for the Haskell?
Yeah, this one was kind of a pick by attrition. I think just the pace scenario is going to be a lot murkier than or faster than what it might project. I think How Great Is Nate and Kingsbarn are kind of forced to try to get position. Subrogate is definitely going to fire out of there. Salute the Stars is going to want some kind of
I
position
like
too.
him. I'm going to use him because I think visually he was impressive. I think he can sit. Like, I like that he went, and then when a couple others went, sat, which he may have to do in this race, just like you're pointing out. So I like that he's actually showed that in a race when a couple others went, he took back. He's not my top pick, but late exotics, I throw the 4 in because I think he can sit a little bit more than some of the others.
Yeah, he definitely has shown that ability. And also, Classic Catch will probably be like the closer in this race, even though he's not usually way out of it. He still probably won't want to be in that stalking spot. He'll probably
Yeah.
want to come back from a little further back. So that leaves me with my pick, who is Moreau, who
Me
passed
too.
horses,
Yeah.
both times. I know this is his first time going 2 turns. He should be able to handle it,
Yeah.
but is definitely on the improve in a race that's a little bit strange as far as like, it looks on paper that there's going to be like 4 or 5 horses lining up for that second tier behind Subrogate.
My
And that's why I think how great is Nate might get caught out wide with Kings Barnes unless they decide to just drop back, which I don't think they really want to do. So this is really tough for those outside horses, and I think Moreau might get the best trip of them all because I think that horse can get in front of the one and
I agree
kind
with
of
you.
Yeah.
kind of
Get the
have
jump.
some options there. Yeah.
I like Moreau. I made him my top selection too. I thought his debut was very good. He was inside. He pushed through and he angled around. Was like a solid fourth. And then last time out, he took back. He was just behind the leaders. He was tucked inside behind the top flight. He angled around 3 wide. It was like perfect. It was almost exactly what we're hoping for here. My only concern is a concern that's maybe individual to me. It's one that you
I
talk
doubt
about
it.
a little bit, Barry, with certain riders that you have success with. Like for me,
He's got to
Florent
hit the
Geroux,
weights. He
I
got to
have
hit the weights
zero
and hold that
success
horse
when
a
it
little bit.
comes to him off the pace like this with like
Yes.
a horse like this, like a horse
Yeah.
freewheeling on the lead. Absolutely, I've had good success with, but it seems like I can recall a few in my head where when he's had to grab a hold of them, verifying earlier this year, there was an adult, or last year, there was another, and it was another one for Asmussen. He was kind of doing the same. And for me, if he can work out the trip right behind, I think that's the horse. And I'm playing him from a stable duel standpoint at 8-1. But you knew where I was going before I even went there. That's the one thing. And it happens, Matt, too, right? Because we're as riders, they're athletes. Everybody has a strength and weakness, just like any basketball player or baseball player. It's not like we're even being negative on them. It's just something that we're mentioning if it's valid and it's something to point out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, even some of our jockeys that we really like, I'm a huge fan of a jockey like Raylu Gutierrez, but like Raylu, listen, it's like send. That's what Raylu does well. Like get out there, be aggressive on the front end. Like Raylu being patient sometimes, he's super strong. So he'll be able to finish, but it's just, how do you navigate those things? Everybody's got pluses and minuses, but it's interesting that Flo ended up on this horse for Andrew McKeever rather than the 4, the Cox horse. And this the Moreau is a fascinating horse as well because it's Spadestown up top, damn out of Tappet underneath. So it's like, hey, what if we just threw together a sprinter with somebody who should like distance? And then you have Andrew McKeever training an Eclipse Thoroughbred owned horse. It's just, there's a lot of things going on here with Moreau. I like him as a horse, but it's just kind of a very interesting amalgamation of circumstances with this one.
Yeah, and maybe with Rosario on Salute the Stars, maybe they're tipping their hand a little bit with the tactics, right? Maybe
he ain't gonna be on the lead,
right? I was gonna say, I don't know if he's getting aggressive. If
that's crazy about Joel. Like when he was in California, he was the best speed rider.
Well, I know, and he's still. It's not that he can't do it. Like we're talking about it, sort of the flip side of Florent, right? I actually get very excited if I've backed a horse and Joel's on it and he's close to the lead, because then I'm like, oh, this horse is live. Like if this horse is like brought himself to the lead without even really
right, exactly.
Asked, right?
He's not doing anything. He's just sitting there
because he's gonna finish strong on the horse. So I'm always like, oh wow, this horse is super live today. Salute the Stars, and the 2 is the horse who Barry and I were both talking about right now. Moreau, very live play, 8-1 in your stable dual lineups, will only cost you $3,000. So right next door in race number 11, I wanted to mention a horse who I think my buddy Barry might appreciate one of the angles that I'll point out. This is a really competitive race. It's a fun race, the Eatontown. Honestly, you can make cases for, I think, 7 of the 8. Like Gina Romantica is your morning line favorite at 3-1. I feel like Katie's a Lady might have to improve to compete with these, but anybody else in this field wouldn't shock me. Malavat ran huge in the Breeders' Cup twice here, in the mile and in the juvenile fillies turf. Just threw in a clunker last time out. The 5 Spirit and Glory is in really nice form, was a local winner over Monmouth Park's turf course. You've got Scottish Star, who's really quick. She kind of packs it in, but she's very fast. She's always going to be there. Consumer Spending makes her second start of the year. She was just behind Market Segmentation, who came back to win a grade 1 and frank that form. You've got Surprisingly, who never runs a bad race and is really honest. And look at Vergara, whose form is I think the one that's sneaky, and that's where I land, because I think she's going to get dismissed a little bit. You start diving into her races last year, she doesn't have very many bad races. She threw in a clunker on the synthetic and in the Bourbonette Oaks. Didn't like Turfway. Okay. She has one poor race where she went 1 1/8 miles on a yielding turf course, and she got the lead that day, and then she faded. Following that, bang up race, second in the grade 3 Ontario Colleen up at Woodbine. Bang up race, wins one of those really big, like $400,000 stakes races at Kentucky where she beat Skims. Then in the next race, she comes back in the Sands Point. She runs a really good second. What I loved about those two, all 3 different courses where you had Woodbine, Kentucky, Aqueduct. And then from 3 to 4, she's off from October to May. She shows back up in May. She runs fine, and her speed figure is like right at the peak of where she was last year. So that shows me she's come right back to where she was. She just ran exactly like a horse who would need the race. Barry points out the fact that that figure is where she was last year. So you know she can get back to that, and she's probably got a step forward now in this start. If she just improves at all, that puts her right on the wire for motion. She's 8-1, and she really fits well in here. If you watch that Gallarette, she's right in the race, and she just gets a little tired late. Exactly how you would figure a horse coming off the bench like this would run. So for me, Vergara, in a very contentious race where you're probably gonna have a lot of horses that are like 4 to 5-1, give me one of them that's like the biggest price of that group that I think can compete with them.
Yeah, so, that makes a lot of sense. I will say I looking over this race, and again, depending on what the weather situation is and what the turf situation is, if it is a soft turf, Malavath, I think, is like a must play, because that horse clearly, you go back and look at her form in Europe, she's a dynamite when there's a lot of moisture in the ground, and she is really strong when it's a soft ground. So, depending on what the going's like, she's one that you got to play if it's a soft or yielding surface.
And I will tell you, I went to a local Southern California independent wrestling show. It's called PWG. It's very well known for being like one of the really big independents. It's kind of like AAA baseball. You'll see a lot of really big stars there right before they go to the WWE or somewhere else. And so it's fun because there's only like 200 people in the audience, but the audience is really crazy. The tickets are really hard to get. You'll actually see celebrities show up here and there. And one night I'm sitting and I look to my left, and 2 seats down, it's Sofia Vergara. And she's sitting right next to Joe Manganiello because that's her husband. And the best part is I will say, some people you see on TV, you're like, I don't know if they're beautiful or good looking. Is it a makeup thing? She is stunning. Like, absolutely, like, stop what you're doing. Like, she's got like a halo around her when she walks by. Like, you're like, oh my God, she is unbelievably gorgeous. And
I love it.
She was so cool. She was getting into the wrestling show. And so one of the wrestlers comes out and he goes, hey, Joe Manganiello, Sophia and me, huh? Like they're doing the Rick Rude stuff. It was great. And Joe Manganiello gets up and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like getting into it. It was so cool. And I don't know anything about Sofia Vergara, but from that one night, I think she's like the greatest person in the world, just because I saw her and she like got into the wrestling show and she was gorgeous. So let's get Vergara home in race number 11 at Monmouth Park as we keep rolling along. Where are we headed? Maddie, you are in the 12th, right next door. It's the grade 3 Salvatore Mile. What a contentious, fun race this one is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super contentious. And the thing about this race is We were talking about speed earlier. There should be a ton of speed in
Yep.
this race.
Yep.
So you look at the number 1 horse, Petulante. You look at the number 2, Riding with Biden.
Yep.
The number 3, Empty Tomb. You keep going down. Number 6,
Bourbon
Octane,
Calling wants to be
obviously.
close.
Yep.
Octane.
Yep. Nimitz Class. I mean, all
Trademark
these
tries
horses-
to sit, but he can't sit. Every time they
No.
try to sit with him, he goes.
No.
I've tried to get him to sit. He can't.
You can't do it. And so I'm going to go back to an old friend of ours. And I'm going to go back to the number 10, Bourbonic.
Me too. Oh,
And
here we go. Yeah.
This is, this is our old friend who just, lit up the tote board 2 years ago at the Wood Memorial at a massive price. And, hasn't really done a ton since, but I think that he is a horse that is, I think, more ideally suited for a mile. So I like the distance, and there's so much speed. And so from a stable duel standpoint, it makes so much more sense to use him rather than Artorias, because Artorias is coming back from a layoff, and you could say, well, they're the same type of horse. Yeah. And the difference is one's going to cost you $8,000 in stable duel, and the other is going to cost you $1,000. So I'm going to use Bourbonic every single day. Because the other thing is, those horses that come from off the pace, off a layoff, I'm always a little skeptical about, because that burst isn't quite there sometimes.
Yeah,
that first time back.
Sometimes they're not quite as sharp early. They're a little lazy as the especially at a place like Monmouth, especially in a race like this where they could be going very fast. This horse could get outrun a little bit early on, and bigger fish to fry down the line too. Like we said, for Artorias, this horse is fine with like a really good second or third in this race to set up for big stakes races down the line. And you look at Bourbonic, I think a lot of people aren't going to want to play this horse because of his last 2 races.
Right.
They have no relevance to me in this race whatsoever.
Agreed.
As long as it's not a muddy track and it's not going to be on the turf. So let's just go back to the Stymie, where he's behind Repo Rocks, Miles D, far more power. He does not run bad in that race at all. It's a smaller field in a race where there's not the type of pace he's going to get here. When he gets a little pace, what's wrong with that non-winners of 2 at Aqueduct? Like that race is super competitive here. That race absolutely is good enough to be right with this group. Behind our buddy Law Professor before that. Like, he fits. He's going to come running. He's going to come closing. Bourbonic for me and Maddie, 10-1 on the morning line. So will only cost you 1,000.
You guys are better than me, because I thought that the 1 was like the play,
the horse to beat
in that race.
I think
I like him a lot.
If he can sit, I'm going to use him in the pick 4 and stuff, because if he sits like he did last time, that'll be beautiful. Like, he can get the trip and get the jump. I'm a little worried in this big field if he can get that perfect kind of trip, but he's super, super nice. Like, he's honest. He's done very little wrong. And it's a good spot for him. It really is. Petulante. So let's just go right next door, close things out in the, of the stakes races. It's the final. It's the grade 3 Monmouth, and Tribhuvan from the inside is 9-5 on the morning line. He won the United Nations 2 years back. He was 4th in it last year. So they're trying to get a prep for him, so that way he can come back in about 5 or 6 weeks and be ready to rock in the United Nations. And he does look like he's the horse to catch in here. That's the one thing that's a little frustrating if you're trying to beat him, because the other contenders don't seem like they're all that fast. Never Explain has won 3 in a row, but he's more of a tracking type. Speaking Scout is more of a stone cold closer. He's a grade 1 winner. He's honest. Dying to Drive, deep closer. I'm going to come back to the 5 in a second. And then Catnip is really honest. And I don't have any knocks on Catnip. He can sit a little bit. This is just sort of the acid test for him. Like, how good is he? Yeah. This horse, the 5, Commandeer, is really interesting to me. So I'm going to pull up his race and we can watch it while I kind of talk over him.
This is a Matthew DeSantis play right here.
I like him. Yes.
Right? So first off, his last race, he comes from way out of it. He's a lot faster than that. Almost all of his other races, he's really close to the lead in faster dirt races. So if you look at this field and you're not sure who's like the other fast horse besides Tribhuvan, I think it's this one. And Paco is aboard. But let's watch his first race on the turf. This is when he's 5 years old. This is a horse who's only raced 13 times. He's been his own worst enemy. He's had some gaps in his training, in his racing career. He hasn't been able to stay on the track all that much. He is the number 8 in here. First time on the turf. Watch him, how he stumbles. He goes right down to his nose. So this horse hasn't run in 8 months. He's making his first start on the turf, and right off the bat, he goes right down on his nose. He's also 32-1 in a really tough third level allowance race at Keeneland. It's not like it's a soft spot, but after that bad start, he settles. He's 9th of 11, but you can see he starts to get comfortable towards the back of the pack here. And once he's asked for a run, he actually responds really well. You start diving back into his form before the turf race. He was behind riding with Biden, who we just talked about, and he wasn't that far off of riding with Biden early. He sat pretty close. He was on the lead, going long in race with Fearless and the Go Sapper. He was with Life is Good and Nick's Go in the Pegasus World Cup. This horse has faced some legitimate horses. Now the 8 starting to get into a nice stride, trying to figure out where to go. He's going to angle to the outside. And then at the top of the lane, watch how quickly he flies by a lot of this group. He's actually hanging on his wrong lead too until the very end of this race when he switches over and he changes leads. And then you see a nice burst from him. So look at the 8 with the blue cap. He tips out here and he's shaken up a little bit and he flies by this group. And right here, he has a tough time. He starts to lug a little bit right here. You can see he's not able to get on his right lead. He's still kind of leaning on the wrong one. And then boom, right here, he kicks in. This was a monster effort from a horse making their first turf start and from a horse who's had shown speed in a lot of his races, who was a much more tracking tactical horse. I really like him in this spot, guys. I think he's going to sit a lot closer. I wouldn't be shocked if Paco breaks fast and makes the one work a little bit and pushes him early on. This horse should be right there early, and I'd love to see him sit in second. That's the number 5, Commandeer. 5-1 on the morning line will cost you $6,000 in your stable dual lineups. So we finish up at Monmouth Park. Matt, remind us what the details on the Monmouth game is for Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 different contests at Monmouth on Saturday. There is a $3 contest, minimum or maximum of 2 entries, $150 in the pot. $35 goes to the winner. The big one though is the $4,000 pot, $40 entry, 3 entry maximum, $775 goes to the winner. So you have that $3 or that $40 game on Saturday.
Beautiful. That's Saturday at Monmouth Park. Let's finish up. We're going to each give out a couple plays over at Santa Anita for Saturday. Now, if you're playing Santa Anita Stable Duel, there's a contest. But if you're someone who likes to play, pick sixes, they actually have a pick 6 bonus on Saturday. If you're the only winning ticket, you get $1 million. They guarantee you at $1 million. It's because on Sunday, it's the mandatory payout for everything because it's closing day. So Sunday, all the exotics will pay out. Everything must go. And, Santa Anita and Southern California can have days where the fields are short and there's not a whole ton. But what's funny is on their good days, they're really good. They can set you some really nice fields. And that's what happens this weekend because after this weekend, there's no turf racing in Southern California for a month until Del Mar. Del Mar doesn't start till the second week of July. So they go and run for a few weeks at Los Alamitos, but a lot of horses don't even run there because it's a little lower level and there's no turf. So this weekend, there are massive fields on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because everybody's just trying to get one more race in before they go off for 3 or 4 weeks before Del Mar starts. So you're going to see some really good racing this weekend at Santa Anita. Let's get started on Saturday. So for Matt, you're looking at 6, 8, and 9. Barry's looking at 6 and 8. Let's start in race number 6 at Santa Anita. We're going a mile on the turf. We've got 62.5 claimers here. Barry, why don't you kick us off, buddy? Where do you want to go in race 6?
Yeah, this is a nice little race, for maidens. It's crazy because this race, you've seen these horses run already. Nobody's really looked that spectacular by any means, and it's kind of wide open. And I ended up on number 5, LT's Choice. This horse is a half to, or actually a full to a horse named Clutch Hitter, who runs well on the turf already. I like the improvement. This horse, debuted June last year, ran okay, laid off. Whatever happened. Came off the bench. They put this horse in a mile race on the turf and ran a much improved race for the new connections. And I think that is something to build upon in this race because nobody else is really doing anything. How can you have any faith in any of these horses?
No,
Including,
Sorin's been rolling. All of the horses he's sending out are firing, even the ones that aren't winning. This horse is going to take a big step forward. Second start off the bench. LT's Choice. What about for you, Matty? You're in the same race, right?
Yeah, in the same race, and I agree with Barry in terms of the general overall view of this race. I went with a slightly bigger price. I went with the number 3, Viewers Discretion.
That was my other choice, actually.
Yeah, so it's it kind of same sort of thing. Barry, to your point, we've seen these horses again and again. This is a little bit of a new shooter. Obviously, has been running in the Midwest, now coming out to the West Coast to run on the turf. That's usually the opposite of the angle that I usually play against. So in terms of West Coast horses coming east, I'm usually not a big fan of that. But Midwest and East Coast horses going west, usually it's not a bad transition. So this is one that's got some nice races. And what I like is, you're getting Lasix for the first time. You're getting back at what I think this horse does best, which is going a mile on the turf. And this horse is actually running against some nice competition that's come back to win other races, running in those Indiana Grand races and things like that. So this horse is also versatile, can sit a few different types of trips, can sit, more of a stalking trip, can close from the back. So depending on how the pace plays out, I just thought this one made a little bit of sense at 12-1, only going to cost you $750. Obviously there's some big stakes races on the card. If you want to spend up on one of these big 2-year-olds, that Bob Baffert has or something like that in your stable duel, you're going to need to save some money somewhere. And this feels like a spot where you can do it in this race.
I remember when you're a kid, that's like one of those things that you hear. And I thought it was like, yeah. I would get so excited every time I heard that because I was like, oh, yes, something's coming. And it was one of those things where, like, until I saw it, I swear, like, 3-year-old Gino thought it was just all one thing, right? Like, Viewers Discretion was all one word. Like, it was the way you say it. Viewers Discretion. No, it's Viewers Discretion. It was like one of those things that I would have just said. I wouldn't even have known it was 2 words, or the way it would have looked weird to me. But yeah, that always got me excited as a kid.
But by the way, that still gets me excited as an adult, right? Sometimes.
I was gonna say,
when Game of Thrones was at its peak.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You're like, viewer discretion advised. And you see what's it going to be this week? Let's see.
Give me the sniper with the Michael Jackson popcorn meme where he's throwing
it
over and over. That's what I want right there as we keep rolling on Saturday at Santa Anita. We are going to move to race number 8. So let's move to the 8th race. For the record, in the 7th race, there is a horse that's debuting in this race that, based on the workouts, is just a freaking monster. And that is the 6 Miramati, who's named after Frank Miramati. They paid over $1 million for this one. This one's a son of More Chocolate, who was a grade 2 winner and multiple grade 1 placed. You can watch the 2 most recent works on XBTV. Wow. The June 5th one, this horse just flies, and just the poor workmate just puts away this poor workmate early. Yeah. And then the next one, you could tell, was so much slower on purpose, just to try to get the horse to slow down a little bit, to relax, to build it. That actually starts to pick 6 in race number 7. The horse is 4-5 on the morning line for a first-time starter. But in the 8th race, we will go 6.5 furlongs. It's a first level allowance race. And for me, fellas, I'm in this race. I'm going to Baj, the 4. I like Baj in this spot a little bit. I think the 6.5 is just going to be perfect for a horse like this. I would prefer the downhill layout a little bit more than the straight 6.5 for this one, but I still think it'll play very, very nicely too. I mean, overall, this is a pretty honest horse. You start diving into his races, race by race. He has like one bad race That was off a layoff. His second race wasn't even that bad at Kentucky. He got action and he showed some ability that day. And I just think he's a really good fit in this spot. There were like one or two other horses that I'll probably be using in multi-exotics, but from a stable duel standpoint at 5-1, I thought he's going to give you good value in here. Feel like he'll be involved in the race. He can pass horses. So I'm on the 4 here. Beige. But
I
how
hope,
about
I
for
hope you're
you,
using the horse that
Barry?
I'm using is the 8
There we
Cali
go.
Bay.
Yeah.
And I think that horse just needs that extra half furlong. I think
Mhm.
that's going to be the difference here. Has run well every time at 6 on the flat and has been pretty good. Broke his maiden on that trip back in January last year. Came back running since a year layoff. And I think this one is in the right spot. It's going to be right there from start to finish, not too far back. I think that horse needed that last one on May 6th and just sets him up perfectly.
And people don't like doing this as gamblers, but we have to. Like, we have to treat every race individually. Sometimes what we can do as gamblers is we can look at a horse's form overall and be like, oh, they didn't run well the last few races. Nah, they're not in good form. That's really dangerous to do. That's one thing that I learned early on that I try to do the opposite of. And I'll tell you, sometimes I do too much work or I do a lot of work that I look at and it's like, oh, yep, I probably did too much work. But you know what? There's going to be another time when there's something that you looked at that helps you and you're going to remember a horse from a chart or something. But just keep in mind with Cali Bay, March the 2nd race followed by a layoff. But look at how strong this group was. The winner in that race was named Burning Turf. Burning Turf came back to win next start, won 3 in a row, and is a legitimate stakes horse, has been in back-to-back stakes races since. The runner-up, Gold Phoenix, is a Grade 1 winner. This horse won the Grade 1 Kilroe. Others in this race that are really solid. You have Southern Horse, who came back to win their next start. Constitution Affair, the last place finisher, came back to win their next start. New Park came back to win their next start. This is a really, really fast horse. This was a strong race. Even a horse like Spirit Maker has been in good form, rattled off back-to-back wins earlier this year. So, Barry, I think this is a sneaky horse to use in exotics too, because you go 3 races in a row and you can make excuses for all of them. Tough race and followed by a little bit of a layoff. Came back on May the 30th and then was sent to the bench again all the way 10 months. Shows back up on May the 6th, needs the race. It's also a good turf course, now stretches out. You really can talk yourself into Cali Bay, who is 12-1 on the morning line for the sniper. Maddie, you also have one in race number 8.
I do. And this should tell you how wide open the field is, that all 3 of us are on 3 different horses.
Yeah.
I'm on the number 3, which is another 12-1 horse, Dancing in Rinka.
Nice.
And this is one who, it's interesting. I'm not going to say every running line makes sense, but this is a horse where when they shortened this horse up from going a mile to 6.5, the horse finally broke his maiden. And then they went on the downhill. And I actually think going back to the flats is going to be better for this horse, because if you look, the 2 downhill efforts were not that great. But if you look at the 2 flat efforts, the maiden breaking win and then the first level allowance win, or the first level allowance effort, you saw progression from a speed figure standpoint. I think 6.5 on the flat is what this horse is going to do well. You get Tiago Pereira up, who's been riding really well, particularly on the turf. He's had some big wins. Obviously, Macadamia was one of those horses. He got home in a really big spot a couple weeks ago. So at 12-1, $750, this feels like a horse that is kind of on the improve. And this is one of those things where when a horse takes a long time to break its maiden, a lot of times it will take 3 or 4 races for this horse to kind of acclimate to running against winners. And so you kind of, you had a couple of those races. I don't think the setup on the downhill was perfect. So this is really the second time on the flat against winners. I think you're going to see a progression from this horse at 12-1, only 750 in stable duel.
Matt, you've got one more right next door, and then I've got one more to close things out. You are going to talk about race number 9, which is a Calbred maiden special weight race going 6 furlongs on the dirt.
Yeah. So this is an example of, morning lines being influenced by connections. I'll just say, because there's the horse that I like in this race is the number 2, El Rey Dorado. And this horse ran a 65 buyer speed figure last time out, which was in debut in a state restricted 61 maiden special weight, finished 5th by 4 lengths. Now, if you scroll down to the Baffert horse, that's a little bit further down, the number 6, Cowboy Mike, ran a 65 buyer speed figure in a state restricted maiden special weight race, finishing 4th by 5.5 lengths.
And had, let me say, had no trouble and actually had a perfect trip when the horse right next to him had a bunch of trouble. Like he should have won that race or run a lot better than he did.
Right. And Cowboy Mike is 5-2. Meanwhile, the 2 who ran basically the exact same race in a different spot in terms of speed figures and just overall placement and finish is 8-1. So I'm going to use the 8-1 horse all the time in that spot. Only going to cost you $3,000. Listen, I do think the 5 makes a ton of sense in terms of the most likely winner. But if you're looking for a horse that's going to get you some points underneath, or if you go, I can't afford to spend $9,000 on a horse, on a maiden, maybe you just don't want to play that sort of high risk, high reward sort of thing, then this horse just, I think, makes a ton of sense. It's going to turn in an honest effort. You look at what everybody else has done in the field, it honestly stacks up really nicely. So I think, you make sense second time back, and it's a smaller barn. Antonio Garcia doesn't have the sort of, the sort of animals that Bob Baffert has. So you see this huge discrepancy in the morning line, but I think it's something you can take advantage of in Stable Duel.
And if you get into this race and you're really strapped for cash, but you're looking to play this race, even a horse like the 1 who has speed, right? We at least know that he has speed, and we don't know that about anyone else in this field.
That's the truth.
Like, we don't know. Yeah. A couple of these first-time starters might, but we don't know that. And Seattle Surf is quick. And again, based on speed figures, it's not like he's all that far behind the others in here. He went sub 22 fractions. He just may not have to battle in this race, and he could hang around a lot longer, Seattle Surf. So there's a look at race number 9. I've got one to close things out in the 12th race. Bailout Barry is here with us, so I have to give one to close things out on Saturday at Santa Anita. There's not very much speed in here. I do think the 3 is going to be pretty tough running with the boys. But the horse who I like, I think will sit a really nice trip. I'm going to go to the number 7, Haley Levade. So this is a 6.5 down the hill race. Let's just eliminate her race going 1 1/8 on the good turf. Other than that, her form is really good in her 3 other turf sprint races out here in Southern California. Most recently, she was 2nd. She had a good start. She was 4th on the inside. She tipped out to the 3 path. She was gaining on the winner, but the horse who won just got the jump on her. Just was sitting 2nd, moved to the lead, and ended up winning, and Haley came from 4th. In this race, I think she might be 2nd early on. And if he wanted to get aggressive, she could actually get the lead if they wanted to handle her that way, because there is just no other legitimate sprint speed horses. And that's why a horse like the 4 or the 3, who's not even really sprint speed, he's probably going to get the lead. She is, because there's just not other speed in here. This horse is going longer, a little bit faster, but never really close sprinting. Same sort of thing with Lady J, who's can be forwardly placed going longer. But I think the 7, Haley Levade, is going to be sitting in a really nice spot because there's not much speed in here. She could be really close. Her turf sprint form is very good. She's on the upswing. 8-1 on the morning line will only cost you $3,000 in your Stable Duel lineups. So Friday, we got Gulfstream for you, the Meadows. We got Saturday Monmouth and Saturday Santa Anita. That was about as eclectic as we've ever been on this weekend in Stable Duel, where we got you 3 different racetracks, 2 different days, 2 different breeds, standard breds, thoroughbreds, you name it. If there's a Stable Duel contest there, we are going to play in it. And my friends, it's kind of a quiet week now, kind of, right? Like a little bit of a calm after the last 5 weeks have been real crazy with all the Triple Crown races and the Belmont. And now we'll get a little bit of a calm few weeks before Saratoga and Del Mar and the really fun summer racing, where every single weekend there are big stakes races. So looking forward to that. Barry, my man, what's up for you this weekend? chilling over there. Big Mondays normally with Chuck. You guys going to be talking about everything that's going on post Belmont. And what I love about that show, we handicap. We talk about the races here. You guys will handicap a little bit, but it's more big topics. It's more about what's going on in the world. How could we fix something? What would you suggest? And what's great is it's not just like, hey, that sucks. When people say that, I'm always like, well, what would you do differently? Right? Yep. You guys present that quite a bit. And that's always what I try to do. If I'm going to complain about something, I'm going to come in with a complaint and tell you why I think or how it could be better. Don't just complain and throw stuff, to throw it. Have actual thoughts. And Chuck, who's been involved in a lot of this stuff, he's been in a lot of rooms with people making decisions and hearing the way things go. You guys do that. You guys will say, well, no, that won't work. We have to do it this way. Or people will say things a lot of the time, and Chuck will be like, well, no, that's just not going to work because of this. And then boom, right off the bat. That's why I love listening to that show, because I learn a lot, but you're also talking about stuff that is polarizing, right? It has people on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was the idea from the jump is to kind of get, some industry knowledge out there between, from my angle as a bettor and a horse player, and his angle as a former trainer, and, his experience of doing, he was the racing secretary at Yonkers. Not many people know that, but he's done, pretty much every job there is to do in the racing industry, and he's got a deep knowledge of every facet, including the horse player side. So, I learn stuff from him every day, and you can definitely hear it when we get on our podcast. It definitely brings the best out of us.
With Maddie, you've got the Capping the Cards, the Win Play show. Matt's doing the great stuff on Monday nights with Assiniboia Downs and Trust the Profits. Every single Monday night at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time, you can tune in with Matt, preview the card for about 30 minutes, and then hang out with Matt throughout the card, and you watch the races there. So, man, things have been going really, really well on your end. You have pumping out so much content, real quality stuff, and best place to follow you just on Twitter, social media, where we can get all of that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, handle at Failed to Menace. Decided not to do a Capping the Card this week just because of I was going to do Monmouth, but then I looked at the forecast and I was like, yeah, it's I don't feel like giving out picks if it's going to be sloppy seal or if it's going to be.
You get your opinion out here, right? Yeah. You were able to share a few here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's much more spot plays. And I'll probably give out my top pick and value play like on Saturday morning. Like once I see what the conditions actually look like, and once I know which races are on turf and off turf and that sort of thing. So, but no, doing a lot of great stuff. And yeah, the Mondays in Assiniboia are a ton of fun. So you've joined me before. If Barry,
man, I was sitting in second going into the last race on Monday night, and then I cratered in the last race. Couldn't get into that 5. I just wanted to get qualified, like you said, for the big Manitoba Derby contest.
No, we need to get Barry and Chuck need to have a Monday off so Barry can join us on that too. So but all of this is very much so fueled by DRF bets and all the great content that we get on DRF. So
if you ever want to follow along, you see this past performances that we use on this show, their formulator, you can actually get those for free when you sign up for a DRF bets account. So if you go right now and you sign up and use the promo code winning, if you deposit $250, they'll give you a $250 match right away. So you're actually going to start with $510 and 10 formulator cards. Your 210 becomes 250, becomes 510, and 10 formulator cards right off the bat. And then what's cool, every time you bet another 50, you earn a credit for another formulator card. So if you're betting over and over on DRF bets, you're going to accumulate a lot of free credits for past performances. You're never going to have to spend money on past performances. That's what we want as horse players. And with DRF bets, that's what you get. Good luck, Maddie, all weekend long. Good luck, my man, Barry. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with us. Appreciate your support. We'll be back next week, 10:00 a.m. Eastern time. Don't forget, today you can play over at Gulfstream, and you can also play in that free game at the Meadows. Tons of options for tomorrow. And as we leave, we say hello to my good friend, Joey Cleveland.
Better, you want to spread your a pony knowledge.